Greetings, students. This video is for Monday, May 4th and Tuesday, May 5th. This is introducing the Civil Rights Movement unit. Okay, so go to the links, the new links I gave you, scroll to the Civil Rights Movement materials, open up the Civil Rights Movement packet. Once you've opened up the Civil Rights Movement packet, please make a copy for yourself. Right now you cannot edit it, but if you make a copy, then you can edit it. Go ahead and choose make a copy. I don't really like the copy of language, so go ahead and get rid of that. And then at the end, write in your name. Don't worry about share it with the same people. Don't worry about copy comments and suggestions. Go ahead and click OK. And then you'll have your own copy that you can edit it. Okay, Sam. Once you get there, type in your name too into that part. Now you know this will be the version that you can edit. Okay. This version you can't edit, you just have view access to. Once you make a copy, you can edit anything you want. The first thing you want to type in is the unit question. Go ahead and type in this unit question. It reads, has the civil rights movement succeeded or failed? And you're going to type that right in here. Explain. If you want to undo the underlining, fine. You don't care, fine. I just care that you got the information in there. Then go ahead and do the anticipation guide. Read through each statement and choose X if you agree or X if you disagree. Pause the video clip, get that done. And then unpause when you're done. Okay, now that you've finished that, we're going to go on to the slideshow notes. Go ahead and make this bigger if you like. And go back to the links page, open the Civil Rights Movement presentation. That'll get you to here. Key events of the Civil Rights Movement. This is a quick overview of the major issues that happened and things I wanted to add. Make sure you got from the narrative. Okay. To take these notes, it would be difficult to keep toggling back and forth. So what I want you to do is download an extension called Tab Resize. Go ahead and type in Google Chrome Store or something into your browser, your search, and then type in the word Tab Resize. That should give you this arrows going two directions. Yours should say add to Chrome. Mine says rate it because I've already added it and it's right here. Once you get it downloaded, go ahead and click on it and choose 1x2. Then go back in here and with your document selected, pull it over. Right there. And then shrink it so it's the right size for you to type in there. And then type in all the blanks, fill in all the blanks for slides. What is it? 1 to 6. So on this one, key events of the civil rights. What's the last word, Sienna? Movement. Okay, good. Then just delete the underlining stuff. And then go through all of 1 through 6. Go ahead and pause the video at this time. And then unpause when you finish doing the notes for slides 1 to 6. Okay, key events of the Civil Rights Movement. The goal of the slideshow is to give you the key information and introduce the Civil Rights Movement terminology. Okay, some things I don't think the book kind of explained. I don't go back as far as me. Basically, the history of slavery in the Constitution goes back to the 3/5 Amendment. 3/5. And that's how they agreed to count slaves for apportioning representatives and presidential electors and direct taxes. The South wanted the slaves to fully count because they wanted to make sure they had enough representation in the House of Representatives. North didn't want them to fully count because then they would have people that couldn't vote being represented, which they thought was unfair. The South wanted sufficient representation in Congress, so the compromise, instead of counting a slave fully, a slave was counted as 3/5 of a person. And that's kind of how the Constitution started with slavery, and it's pretty sad and offensive. After that, slavery persisted in the country. Eventually, there became an abolition movement, and in 1857, there's this infamous case called Dred Scott v. Sanford. In 1857, Chief Justice Taney wrote, "Blacks were regarded as beings of an inferior race. The Negro might justly and lawfully be reduced to slavery for his own benefit." This is an awful thing to say about anyone, that a Supreme Court justice, the Chief Justice is saying it. It's particularly awful, but it was the law of the land that blacks were not considered citizens. Negro was how they would have used the term in the 19th century. We no longer deem that term acceptable in today's language. Anyway, back to the case, because Scott was not a citizen, said Taney, he had no standing to sue in federal court. Means he didn't have a right to sue because he was not a person per se, constitutionally speaking. So basically, the Supreme Court upheld slavery in Dred Scott, and it's one of those infamous decisions. There's one more coming up. This is Dred Scott himself. Eventually, when his master died, he was freed anyway, but that's why this case became an issue. In 1863, in the middle of the Civil War, President Lincoln made the Emancipation Proclamation. See the flag and the eagle here, wrapped in patriotism. He proclaimed that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth forward shall be free. In other words, he freed the slaves in the part of the country that he didn't control. So was he really freeing them? Not really. Was he creating an ideological focus for the war? Definitely. It was no longer about Southern secession and states' rights. It was now about ending slavery. And it led to more support by some people. Following the Civil War, all slaves are eventually freed in the 13th Amendment. The 13th through the 15th Amendment become known as the Civil War Amendments. At the same time, after the Civil War, Black people really didn't get the vote consistently because of Southern violence. Ku Klux Klan, or KKK, was formed after the Civil War. The main reason was to deny real freedom to Blacks in the South, to keep them from voting, to keep them from having rights. And what happened is they started lynching people that wanted to vote, killing people for wanting to vote. And a lynching is when a group of people kills one or a few publicly. It means the whole community's in on it. See, this whole community's in on this. This whole community's in on this. It's the Klan here. According to the Tuskegee Institute, between 1882 and 1951, 4,730 people were lynched in the United States. 3,437 of them were Negro, and 1,293 of them were white. So most people that were lynched were Black people. Result, a lot of eligible Black voters were unable to vote because of the violence and the unfair laws regarding voter registration, and the fear of violence kept people from voting. This is an embarrassment that this happened. And when you're killing people, why is this allowed to happen? Well, a lot of the sheriffs, they were white and they were Klansmen too. The people that would serve on the jury were white and Klansmen too. And so this is particularly awful when people are doing these things. These are real photos. It's not made up. It's not a movie. Sad enough. In 1896, there's another terrible Supreme Court decision called Plessy v. Ferguson. After the Civil War, the South created what are known as Jim Crow laws. I know. Jim Crow laws legally separated the races. Jim Crow goes back to this artistic period where blackface was common. Anyway, legal separation is known as de jure segregation. In 1896, the Supreme Court upheld segregation, saying as long as you have separate but equal facilities for blacks, it's legal. But the separate facilities were never legal. I showed you those pictures earlier in the year of the two churches. One had a black tar roof, one was nice and brand new. There was no way those were equal. Anyway, elsewhere in the country, races were separated by tradition, even in the North, and also discrimination in economics. Black people were typically in the poor part of town, and white people would dominate in the richer parts of towns. This is known as de facto segregation. So there's basically segregation everywhere. There's also this thing called the one drop theory. If you had any black lineage in you, you were considered black. Notice Homer Plessy here. 7th to 8th, genetically white, 1/8 genetically black, but for constitutional purposes, considered 100% black, which doesn't make any sense, but neither does all this racism. In 1954, there's a major Supreme Court decision called Brown v. Board of Education. In 1951, this little girl right here, her name is Linda Brown, parents tried to enroll her in an all-white school much closer to their home, which was probably nicer too, because all the white schools were. Linda was denied admission because she was an African American. By 1954, the Supreme Court realized the error of their ways in Plessy. They ruled unanimously that racial segregation in schools was unconstitutional. Brown explicitly overturned Plessy. Separate facilities are now seen as inherently unequal. This is the case. This is the school. But it wasn't like all of a sudden people had freedom and desegregation. There was a lot of violence that had to happen and tough times before it worked. See this part in yellow here? This is where segregation existed by law in America. The part in blue, segregation was prohibited by law. The part in pink, there was no laws. The part in purple allowed for local segregation. And that's it for the lecture for today. We'll do the quiz next time. But you're not done for the day.
Whoa.
So for the rest of the day, I want you to go back and read the next section, 8.1. I believe it's page 5. Feel free to answer questions 1 through 4 and then read. You can play the audio clip, you can read the book, you can read from the online materials. As long as you read 8.1, get these questions answered, you'll be in good shape. Go ahead and skip question 14 because I don't need you to get that paragraph done because we're not going to do the paragraphs on the exam. And we don't have quite as much time as normal. That's all I have. If you have any questions, please email me at tsmith@lodi.usd.net. And thank you for CNF for helping me manage my time because the last video was too long.
Why you tell them that?
Well,
Do they need to know that?
does it hurt them knowing that?
Maybe.
No. Goodbye.